Women's Soccer Review Podcast with Dwayne Rollins and Jonathan Tannenwald on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network. I'm Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Excited to be heading into a huge weekend for club women's soccer around the world. And I got to say, especially here in the United States, it's going to be very exciting. The NWSL Fall Series kicks off, headlined by Sky Blue FC against the Washington Spirit on CBS, big CBS, the flagship broadcast network, on Saturday. The English Women's League kicks off its season this weekend, and as I reported, and as you guys have seen by now, NBC Sports did a deal for streaming a package of FAWSL games on their website and apps. Yes, you do have to have a cable subscription to watch them, but there is also going to be a handful of games on television over the course of the season. They won't all be live, but still it's pretty neat, especially with Sam Mewis and Rose Lavelle and Sam Kerr and Pernille Harder and Vivianne Miedema and lots of other stars over there. And are there more to come? Well, we might just discuss that in this show. How about we put it that way? And then the French Women's League season also kicks off this weekend. And I don't know exactly when this show is going to go out. It's being recorded on Thursday lunchtime in the United States. By the time you hear this show, there might be news on the table about a broadcast deal for the French Women's League in the United States and also in Great Britain and also in Germany and Italy. And we're going to get into that in the course of this show here with our guest today, Sophie Lawson, who's based over in the United Kingdom. She writes for SB Nation and a bunch of other websites. And I went out looking this week for somebody who I knew would be a real expert on sweeping the whole board there, as the saying goes, the U.S. And across Europe. And Sophie is one of the very best. We will take a quick break here and then come back, and Sophie will be with us on the other side here on the Women's Soccer Review on the Sports Podcasting Network. Welcome back to the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network. I'm Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer here in Philly. Kevin Laramie, our producer, is minding the shop from Montreal. And on the line with us from over in the UK is our guest today, Sophie Lawson, who writes for SB Nation and a bunch of other websites. Sophie, it's great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Well, remotely here at least.
I'm not really sure which order to do this in, but since we are a North America-based show, let's start with the NWSL and the Fall Series. And look, anybody can obviously say it's huge exposure to have these 4 straight Saturdays of games on big CBS, the broadcast network, came about because the college football season is delayed until late September because of the coronavirus pandemic. The thing, though, to me, and obviously it's you and I know this league really well, and a lot of the listeners know this league really well, too. It's great for the league to have this exposure, but what happens, Sophie, if people wonder when they start watching this where all the big stars went?
You'd have to point them at Europe. It's a tough one, obviously, because after the US's success at the World Cup last year, there was quite a notable boom with everyone getting interested in WSL and wanting to see the players that had lifted the World Cup in France, and a few of them are not going to be playing in the full series. But I think if they hang around and they get interested in the games and the teams, they'll find out a lot of very good players from all over the world who play some very good football. Awesome. It's a North American show. I should say they play some very good soccer.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine to say football on this show. The origin of this program, many years ago, my co-host Dwayne Rollins had a show out of Toronto way back in the day called It's Called Football, and that's how this all began. a very long time ago, and perhaps a few folks out there who were listening have been on board, like me, the whole time since all the way back then. It's the other question that I think has to be asked about this fall series. And I don't know how else to ask it, so I'm just going to ask it. That's Sophie, you know me well enough. That's just kind of the way I am sometimes. What exactly are they playing for here? Are they just playing? I mean, you could easily say they're just playing games for the sake of it, and that's fine. But you could say they're not really playing for anything, really, are they?
You could have possibly said the same about the Challenge Cup. It feels like these mini tournaments, these mini series, are kind of more just gap fillers to keep the players ticking over whilst the world's trying to get to grips with everything else that's happening, and there's putting the kibosh on day-to-day life. But I think it's important that these players play, whether they're big names who'll be likely to go off to the Olympics next year and they need time before that, or if it's just we've got to keep them engaged, we've got to keep our fans engaged. If we have the opportunity to play, if we can do it in a safe way, we should take that chance. And you're giving exposure to the league. So I think it's probably more a lot of little reasons than to be, the domestic champions in the US.
So there are a few teams that I'm keeping my eye on closely in all this. And they actually, for once, they're not the big ones. They're not North Carolina. They're not Portland, except beyond to see whether Sophia Smith plays. I think we're all waiting for that. They're not Chicago. They're not Washington. I don't know what Washington's going to look like without Rose Lavelle. I guess we're going to find out. The teams that I'm really interested in. One, I'm watching Sky Blue, obviously, because I'm waiting to see. They have not yet released their roster. I don't think Carly Lloyd's going to play. That's kind of obvious from her Instagram, I realize, but I've heard as much. The big question is going to be around Mallory Pugh, and if she does play in this, all of a sudden, I think Sky Blue immediately becomes one of the teams to watch in this thing. What do you think?
I think they showed a tremendous amount of growth during the Challenge Cup, and it looked like they could have done if it had been a regular season, then they would have really grown into it more and more. But you could start to see the ideas coming through more and more in each match. And I think if you can add a player like Mallory Pugh to that team who are finding their feet and really growing into who they are now after they've gone through a lot of not great things in their past, I think you're looking at maybe not the cliche of a phoenix rising from the ashes, but you're looking at sort of a new look Sky Blue that are on a really positive upward track. And I don't think they're going to go out and beat every team, but every match will be vital for that development into what you'd hope would be a good 2021 season.
Another team I'm watching, and I'm sure everybody is going to be watching, is the Utah Royals, because of the mess they're in right now with Deloy Hansen, their owner, and Andy Carroll, their chief business officer. And I'm going to assume that everybody has read the stories by now out there among the listenership, in part because they've been around for a few days now, and in part because I really don't want to rehash all the sort of details again. Folks, I'm sorry. I just don't. They're really bad, and it's good that this has all come to light, and I hope that things get better, and I hope that the players of that team, are able to step up here and win a couple games because they deserve it. And we saw bits and pieces from Ciara King in the Challenge Cup, and we're seeing, I think, further now, Sophie, that she has the potential. Even though she's a rookie right now, she has the potential to really become a leader of this team, I think.
Absolutely. And she's obviously, with everything going on off the pitch, she's made some comments, and she seems to have a very mature head on her shoulders that you generally find a lot of players in women's football do. But you can see that she's a bit of a leader off the pitch, and when she steps onto it, she really has been lighting things up for them, and was definitely one of the fun players to watch during the Challenge Cup. But I think overall with Utah, they're in quite sort of a period of transition where they're a lot of older players, got some rookies, still just trying to find out who they are right now.
And then an odd one, as this may sound, I think I'm intrigued by what Lorient might do in this. Look, we know Megan Rapinoe's not going to play again, and that's another one of those issues that is probably not worth rehashing endlessly. We know that Jodie Taylor is not going to be there. But for as much as people wanted to dump on Farid Ben-Stidi during the Challenge Cup, the players like him. And they showed, I think, during that tournament that was a team that, to further what you said a moment ago, if they had a full regular season, they really might have grown into something. And I'm intrigued to see what they can do now with a few more games on the field. And look, I'm not saying that Ben-Stidi's one of the greatest coaches in history or whatever, but I do think he proved a few of his doubters wrong over time. And let's see if he can do it again.
They're an interesting proposition because I think if you looked at the Challenge Cup, they weren't playing the best football, and it wasn't. I don't know. I think the coach is maybe one of some doubters, but I think with some of his choices, I think there are still some question marks. And now, the Reign have lost a couple of players. Jordan's gone over to Spain. Nicole Miki has gone off to Sweden, unfortunately, picked up quite a serious injury, and Jodie Taylor's off in France. So you do have a reduced team. And of course, I mentioned Jess Fishlock will be over in the UK if you want to watch her there. But I think it's sort of every time they get over a hurdle, they find another one in their path, and they're another team that have lost quite a few players. And it's about sort of maybe getting through, feeling out, maybe bringing in some younger players, seeing if they can start putting in more foundations for the future, more than anything else.
We touched on the Western pod region division. What is it? I don't know. There's something. We touched on the Western teams. We touched on the Eastern teams. Let's do one quick on the Southern teams for two reasons, which is Orlando is going to play games finally. And go ahead, Sophie.
I'm excited. The joke of Orlando playing games in 2020, but if they can dig out enough players to put out a starting 11, why not? It's good for them. It's good for the fans.
Yeah, and that's going to be a wide open question, to be sure, because so many of their players have gone over to Europe. So their first game in this thing is September 19th at North Carolina. Their last game was October 12th of 2019. It will have been almost a full year since their last game, which is pretty ridiculous on a lot of levels. But the thing that intrigues me, twofold. One is how angry the team's veterans are going to be and how badly they want to get out on the field. And the other is there are a couple of hints here that Alex Morgan might play in these games. And not that she's all the way back in the game shape yet, obviously, but she's in Orlando and she's training. And if she does play, I think it's going to be fascinating because it obviously makes Orlando much better. And I would never want to play against Alex Morgan generally, Sophie, but I would really never want to play against Alex Morgan when she has a point to prove.
Yeah, I think that's she's I think she's going to be in the mood to get on the pitch and terrorize a few defenses if she possibly can. But I think it's an interesting proposition for Orlando. because I don't think anyone will be expecting them to do anything, if we're being sort of honest about this, because they haven't played for almost a year, because they've lost so many players, because the team is going to be such a young one and such a mix and so many new faces coming together, which kind of gives them carte blanche, because they can be terrible or they can be amazing or they can be something in the middle. And I don't think anyone will say, oh, you should have done better, or you should have. So it actually gives them quite a good position to be in. And if you get Alex Morgan out to the pitch, give her some minutes, let her be more of a senior player, especially for some of those younger ones who are coming in for the Fall Series, then it's only actually going to be a positive for them.
Producer Kevin here. We'll be right back to the Women's Soccer Review. Winning season returns at MyBookie. Winning season means doubling your first deposit. Winning season means Survivor, Super Contest, and Squares. At MyBookie, winning season means hitting all your parlays and props with your feet up, watching your team trounce their rivals. Rejoice! It's time to celebrate the NFL season. Invest in your intuition. Use promo code SPN and double your first deposit. New players get up to $1,000 in free play, designed to add more excitement to the sports you love and the games you bet. From live betting to championship futures, every play you want to make is waiting at MyBookie. It's simple. Make your picks, win big, collect your cash. Use promo code SPN and double your first deposit. Your winning season begins today, only at MyBookie.
All right, having made our way through the NWSL, let's switch our focus now over to England and the FA Women's Super League. And Sophie, this is obviously right your area of expertise in your neck of the woods. And I've only, started recently to pay a lot of attention to it. But with all the moves that have been made this offseason, the big-time player signings like Pernille Harder and Sam Ewis and Rose Lavelle, and again, if you're waiting to hear about more, we'll get to that in a minute because I have something to say about it. Sophie, it sure seems to me like this is going to be potentially the biggest season in FAWSL history.
Absolutely. Loads of new faces coming over. It's giving the league a higher profile. You've got more investment coming in from some of the clubs, and more and more broadcast deals. So more eyes on it around the world.
The first game on the fixture list is Aston Villa Man City. Sam Ewis is going to play. Rose Lavelle is not, because she's not out of quarantine yet. I would imagine it's going to be another week plus until she's training regularly. Training regularly and close to game shape, I should say. I think she's going to be out of quarantine fairly soon, but when she actually gets into a game, might be a while. Aston Villa Man City opens things. That game is on NBC Sports streaming platform and apps. And yes, you do have to have a cable or satellite or otherwise pay TV subscription to watch it, but still 50 games over the course of this season on NBC's streaming platform. The other 72 will be free of charge on the FA Player. Another one that will be on NBC's website is Sunday morning, Arsenal Reading. Arsenal loaded with stars, Sophie, in Danielle Van de Donk, Vivianne Miedema, Steph Catley, a bunch of others. But I have two questions about Arsenal, really, which are, what are they going to do in goal with Lydia Williams out injured potentially for a long time? And why is this squad so thin under Joe Montemuro? I know he likes to run his players a lot, but might it backfire on them?
I guess your first question. They've got Manuela Zinsberger, who I brought in last season, was rotating with PPM. I think, she's proven herself to be sort of the player that Montemuro wanted. So I think that, there's no worry there in terms of it in goal. It's a shame that Lydia Williams could be out for a while, as she's only just come over. But it always seems to be Arsenal's luck, is they always end up picking up injuries right off the bat. And which is then a bigger problem. And it really highlights the fact that they don't have the same squad depth as a team like Chelsea. But that is very much a Montemuro thing, is he likes smaller squad, I think it gives him a lot more time to work with each individual player, to work on certain things over and over, and really get everyone tuned into the same system, which, as long as they can avoid serious injuries, works absolutely fine. If they start running into injuries, as they have in the past, that's when things get a bit wonky for them. And that's, I think, the general concern people have is, can they compete with Chelsea? Chelsea have made a huge bunch of signings, really, really smart signings. Arsenal, whilst they're strengthened, do lack that depth. So if it comes to, well, you go to the bench to change a match to find something special, do you have a player to bring on? And often has been with Arsenal, they haven't. But I think that without just being how Montemurro is, there's not really a huge amount you can do about it. It's just how he likes to coach. But it makes for an interesting season, I guess, if you're a neutral.
Arsenal are going to play Reading, and Reading have Farrah Williams, Danielle Carter, and as we mentioned earlier, they took Jess Fishlock on loan. We know that Fishlock was injured for a while. What's your sense about, if you have one, about whether she's going to be ready out of the gate to play?
I think if she gets an okay from the medical team, you can't keep Jess Fishlock off the pitch. She's always going to want to play, and she's always going to want to make things happen and to be that driving force from midfield. I haven't spoken to her. I haven't spoken to her coaches. I don't know if she's I don't want to make any proclamations one way or another, but I think you can always be sure if she's fit enough to play, she'll be on the pitch for sure.
I guess I should go back to Man City for a minute, because they're, for folks who don't know, they're sort of a big three in the FAWSL right now: Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man City. And order-wise, from top to bottom, it's probably Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
This Man City team has got loads of talent, especially English talent. They've also got Janine Becky of Canada. We're going to get to Chelsea in a moment, but this Man City team's pretty good, isn't it?
They're not too shabby, no. They've got a new coach in Gareth Taylor, so we're not too sure what to expect from them, how they're going to be setting up, what their sort of style will be. But they built up a very strong squad over the course of the last few years under Nick Cushing before he went to New York City, and there is plenty of talent there, and there's an okay amount of depth as well. But with the strengthening by bringing in Sam Lewis and Rose Lavelle, it's giving them one of the best midfields, if not the best midfield in the league. And I think that's quite a good place to start as well. If you look at some of the goals they can add with Ellen White, or the goals from, say, Chloe Kelly or Lauren Hemp. So they're a nice sort of growing team, and the focus for them for a long time has been on developing young English players. So they definitely have a slightly different look to them than other WSL teams, but they're usually a good watch, a good value for money.
So the third game of the weekend that's going to be available over here is Man United Chelsea. 9:30 a.m. Eastern on NBC's website, televised on tape delay at noon on NBCSN. And let's start with Chelsea, even though I know what the listeners are waiting for. And yes, I'm going to get there. Because this Chelsea team, Millie Bright, Maren Melde, Melanie Loopholes, Ji So Young, Jessie Fleming, and we'll get to Fleming in particular in a moment. Beth England, who we'll also get to in a moment. Sam Kerr, Fran Kirby, and then Aaron Cuthbert. And then, by the way, they went out and signed Pernille Harder for the biggest transfer fee in women's football history. They're the favorites, and I would imagine they're the clear favorites, Sophie, are they?
I'd say it depends who you talk to. But for where I sit, they're definitely the favourites. It's going to be, I don't think any team will be able to stop them from scoring goals and stop them from scoring a lot of goals, if we're being honest. And that's generally how you win matches. I think it's going to be a big ask for anyone to keep up with them.
I mentioned we'd stop on Jessie Fleming, so why don't we do that? It's for probably another show here on the Women's Soccer Review. We're going to go in one of these days. We're going to go really in depth on the situation in Canada. And I get, look, is Chelsea a better place for a player to go than most of the teams in the NWSL? Probably. Am I a little conspiratorial about whether the CSA nudged her to go overseas instead of to the NWSL? I might be. Kevin, our producer, of course, is a Chelsea fan. I don't know whether he already has his Jessie Fleming jersey or not.
It's in the mail.
No, not yet. All right. Well, the time will come, I'm sure. Sophie, how big a deal is it that she went to Chelsea specifically?
I think it's huge. I'm just talking to sort of a Canadian journalist, I think it was about 2 years ago now. I think there was always the assumption that Fleming would be going to Europe rather than into NWSL. I think, you know, maybe if you've got your tinfoil hat on, you can think one thing or another. I think often it comes down to personal preference from the player. If we're being honest, if you see a league or a team that plays a certain style, you know, that's gonna fit how you play, then there's always that urge to go there. And with the potential growth in England, it can be a very attractive league for players, and with how, you know, Emma Hayes is really hoping to dominate Europe in very little time. I think it would just be an amazing prospect for any young player, really, if they had the opportunity. And hopefully we'll see Fleming sort of find a role in that midfield. It's getting a little bit clustered, but yeah, I think a lot of people are really very excited to see how she develops over here as well, and or even if she'd gone to France or Germany, anywhere. I think she's always a player to look out for in terms of her development. So that'd be another nice little subplot to follow this season.
That was going to be my other question, which is, do you think she's going to play much?
I've got the Chelsea team right in front of me, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how do you choose a starting 11 out of these players? Who do you drop? How and when do you rotate? And it's giving me a headache just looking at it. I think she's got a lot of talent, a lot of quality, but she's gonna have to prove herself to get into that midfield, because you've got someone like, she's so young, who you think has to start, and you've got Greta and you think, well, she has to start, and then these Leopolds, and we've got to have Sophie England there to help out. There are so many options for Emma Hayes that, yeah, I can't tell you how many minutes Jessie will get if she remains fit throughout the season, but I'm sure she'll get plenty of chances with all the competitions that Chelsea are in.
And the forward line too, you know, with Pernille Harder coming in for, you know, to be a star, obviously. It's got a lot of ramifications. Right. But the thing that I wonder, because look, obviously Harder's going to play. Obviously Kerr is going to play. What happens to Beth England?
I think, depending on formations and maybe modifying the team to who they're playing and keeping everything in check as you would with game management, you do have the potential for a front three of Harder, Kerr, and England if you really want to punish some teams. I think, you know, with how all three of them play, you can move them around, you can rotate them a bit. None of them have to be the lone striker. It's just, if you can strike just that right balance with the team you put out. But I think, you know, even if, you know, one player can't hit a barn door just because they're having a bad day, there's going to be another one, another two, another three, another five who can take the chances. But you know, you look at sort of the form Beth England's been in. You know, she's earned that start for Chelsea. She's really gritted it out and developed since coming in from Doncaster Bell so many years ago now. You know, Harder is coming off a relatively busy season with how Germany got through everything. You know, maybe it's about phasing her into the team as well. Kerr is still trying to settle. She's been very up and down in terms of the matches she's played, not just her performance, but when she has played, she's had a lot of gaps in her games. So I think that could also be a reason for why she hasn't quite been firing all cylinders yet. But there are a lot of options there. I think you can potentially put everyone out, and really hope that they start forming the partnerships amongst themselves. But I don't think anyone's going to miss out too much this coming season.
The 2-3-5 or something like that was suggested to me by a friend of mine who's a tactical savant trying to figure out how to fit them all on the field. All right, now let's get to Manchester United finally. I know I've been teasing it again and again and again, and I've been teasing it on Twitter a little bit. Here's the thing, folks. By the time you hear this show, certainly by the time that game kicks off Sunday, from what I understand, United will probably have announced Tobin Heath and Kristen Press. That's where it is right now. It's about paperwork, and it is about, I think I can say this without really betraying any confidences, because it's about the world we live in, and it's not so easy to get into the United Kingdom from the United States right now, and that's part of it. And that's for anybody, not just a soccer player. But everything I've heard is that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen really soon. And Sophie, you and I are both very good friends with the head of PR for the FAWSL, Kieran Tatham, who was in journalism for a long time. In fact, he was a guest on this show during his time with The Athletic back during the She Believes Cup in the spring. And I was shooting the breeze with him about this, what it might mean for this league if it happens. It's going to blow the doors off everything else that's happened so far, I think. And what do you think?
I think Man United fans are in for a treat, if nothing more. I think we're just there are a lot of big moves, a lot of interesting players coming over from NWSL, and I don't know if I'd say it's the biggest. I don't know if I'm being a little bit harsh on Heath and Press there, but I think it's I'd say for me as sort of a bit of a purist who kind of just watches football. It's on par with Lavelle and Lewis for sort of potential for impact and quality that they're bringing in. I think if you put Heath and Press in your team, you're not going to want for scoring goals. You're going to have Heath try not know God knows how many players and Press banging in some incredible goals. So I think it's all just it's good news for Man United fans. I think is probably the way I'd phrase that.
It's going to be a lot of work for their social media manager, isn't it?
Yeah. It was funny the other day. I think a lot of us are kind of just waiting for them to announce it and to actually get that email through with the press release. And someone dropped into my email and I thought this is it. No, it's not. It was about Fran Bentley going out on loan. And it's funny because whenever that happens or whenever Man United post anything, you do see online that their fans are like, oh, come on. But of course, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, especially pandemic and everything going on with British politics. As you said, it's not that easy just to rock up to England these days. But as you said, it's coming, and it's good news for United.
You mentioned the British politics angle of it, and it's not a political show, as much as I might like it to be one. But I did notice that the FA is going to institute a homegrown player rule. And I should say institute. It more sort of strengthens what's already there, right?
Yeah, it brings it in line with men's competitions in England. I think that was sort of the main goal. There was a sort of a lot of mumbling this time last year before the start of last season about how the current political climate could be affecting things, how some of the imports were maybe doing yada yada, whatever. It depends, what your views on everything are. But I think it's something that's been in the FA's mind for a while, not just to sort of bring it up to in line with the men's game, but how they can continue to have a strong league, but keep opportunities open for homegrown players. Yeah, so they don't get lost in the shuffle as they often do. And I think that's kind of the thing we look at in women's football all the time is domestic leagues or whatever. It's the goal is always to produce a good national team. And I think that sort of maybe in England, you see that less on the men's side, is the Premier League has kind of become the be-all and end-all, and England has gotten lost in the shuffle, whereas in other countries it's about, representing your national team, and that's your goal, where you see that in women's football, but it did feel maybe like England was starting to inch away from that again. So this brings us kind of back down, calms everything down. And having players from all over the world in your team and your league, for me, is only a good thing, and it only makes the English players, the British players, better because they get to play with them, they get to train with them, and and it also opens the door for English players to go elsewhere themselves. I think maybe there is a bit more reticence on that side, but I'm all for freedom of movement. But we'll have to see what happens and how. Some squads at the moment wouldn't fulfill that criteria if it came in right now. But we have to see how they move forward now for next season.
There's sort of the chorus out there that worries about doomsaying for the NWSL with English clubs, especially the big ones that have high profiles and lots of fans over here in the U.S., now getting ready to spending lots of money on players, American players in particular. They obviously market over here a ton. They sell lots of shirts and scarves and tickets when they play friendlies and blah, blah, so on. And it, as you know full well, Sophie, because you've spent a lot of time over here, it drives those of us who believe that the English game is not morally superior up the wall. But there is, I think it's fair to say, a competition going on between the English and American leagues for top talent. And right now, the English league is winning it. And the English league has the potential to continue winning it because there is the potential for them to spend lots more money and because of the brand name recognition of, by way of example, Manchester United or Chelsea or Arsenal or Manchester City or even Liverpool, which used to care about its women's team, and Tottenham, which did for a minute, and so on. You get the point. But I've also had it said to me by a few people who are in the know about these things that the homegrown rule might tip things a little bit for the American League because at a certain point, all the seats in England are going to be full. And that if the NWSL would spend some more money, to put it bluntly, again, they might not be down for the count yet. And I'm not saying that they're going to be down for the count generally, but there's something here, I think, in the homegrown rule and the way it's being structured that the NWSL could benefit from in terms of attracting foreign players if it wanted to and did the right things and was smart enough about it. What do you think, Sophie?
I think it depends with NWSL rules as well, because obviously you've got a lot of bureaucracy in the rules in terms of tour caps and international spots and all of that in America. But I think for a long time the American League has been seen as one of the strongest in the world, if not the strongest in the world, depending on your viewpoint. And I still think, there's a lot of cynicism around when players move and, he's going for money, she's going for the money. I think for a lot of female footballers, it's always about where they can go to be a better player. And so there will always be the allure of the NWSL if, say, the US keeps producing World Cup winners, if you can see that there is a strong league over there. And if England is looking to be the stronger league, that's where players are going to want to go. If it's America, that's where they're going to want to go. If it's Spain, that's always kind of, for me, what pushes players. Sometimes it's maybe if you create comfort. I don't want to go here if I have to learn that language because I know I'm very good at it, or I don't like that style, or it's really cold there, I'm not into that, whatever it is. But I think there's plenty of room for NWSL to remain a stronger league. And as we saw with the Challenge Cup, there's not sort of one team that's really far behind the pack right now. There's a lot more parity in terms of ability and what teams are putting out. And we don't have the sort of situations like Sky Blue anymore. Yes, there's a lot of bad news coming out of Utah. Hopefully a lot of that will be rectified and create a better environment. But if you're a team, no matter where you are in the world, if you can offer a good environment, good training, a good league to play in, minutes, then I think any player will kind of gravitate to a style they want. But if you can kind of sway their arm with, you've got one of the strongest leagues, whether that's the US or England, it's going to be hard for a player to say no to that. But that's me trying to be a bit neutral as well. So.
The other thing I would say, you mentioned a moment ago about people getting cynical about players making moves for money. I think you and I would both agree, and probably a lot of the people out there, go get paid. I got nothing wrong with that. All right, we've talked about England. We've hashed out the points on England. Let's go over to France, which I wish we could actually do because I'd be thrilled to be there right now if I could be. So the French League kicks off this weekend. And again, by the time you hear this show, there might be some news about the ability to watch the French League online in the United States. And here is what I will say that I think I can get away with without getting in too much trouble. There is a new media rights agency over here in the United States called Adelana Football. And I wrote about them when the FAWSL and NBC deal got announced because Adelana is the agency that brokered that deal. They were launched by a couple of women who've got some experience in soccer and in the U.S. media landscape and also in the UK media landscape. One of the co-founders used to work over at Sky. The one who I know is Esmeralda Negron, who worked at Relevant Sports for a long time. And if Relevant sounds familiar to folks over here, it's because they've been the entity that runs the International Champions Cup. And Esmeralda, who, in addition to her work at Relevant, I used to watch her play soccer in college at Princeton. She launched the Women's International Champions Cup in her time at Relevant as one of the higher-up executives there. Then she left there in April and went off to found this company, Adelana, this summer, whose purpose in this world is to get Club Women's Soccer League rights to broadcasters and get those games on broadcast, which nobody's ever really done before, and I think it's really cool. I'm sure a lot of people out there think it's really cool. They've got a lot of things up their sleeve, from what I understand. And one of those things, if you go on their website, which is atafootball.com, and their website is not a secret, even though some of their plans are. If you go on their website, you will see that the schedule of broadcasts that they are coordinating includes a French Division I Alkmaar game of the week. Initially on Adelana's own website, and it says on there that in the future they will be on ESPN Plus in the United States, BT Sport in the United Kingdom, and DAZN in Germany and Italy. My understanding is that not all of those deals are all the way done yet, so I would write things down in a pencil in terms of what the future weeks will hold. But as I said, by the time this show comes out, some of this might be official. I don't know. So I'm just going right now off what I know I can say. But this, I think, since it's going to apply to both of us on our respective sides of the Atlantic, Sophie, getting broadcast distribution for the French League is, I think, a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, it's huge, and it's lovely to see. We're going to have more variety in the leagues we're getting on both sides of the Atlantic.
In theory, again, I'm saying this all in theory. I don't know exactly where it's going to go. In theory, the game this weekend is Lyon versus Paris FC. Not PSG, Paris FC. There is more than one team in Paris generally, and also on the women's side. Paris FC just took Sky Blue FC's Evelyn Vienne on loan. She is, of course, a Quebec native. Somebody who I know Kevin has been following quite a bit. Look, the rule generally is that Lyon blows everybody's doors off and PSG finishes second. I'm where it goes from here, I don't know. Paris FC finished fifth in D1 last year, which is perfectly respectable. The top five, by the way, last year in order were Lyon, PSG, Bordeaux, which cared about its women's soccer team for a few minutes. I'm not sure they still do, but I hope they still do. Montpellier, which has cared about its women's team for a long time, it doesn't have a ton of money, and Paris FC, which has started to care about its women's team quite a bit in recent times. And if I am not mistaken, yes, I'm looking it up now, their club as a whole just got a big stake of it bought by the government of Bahrain. So the Paris Derby is going to be Bahrain versus Qatar. And isn't that going to be a lot of fun, especially for those of us who care about human rights? And yes, I know I'm a PSG fan. Not always easy to be a PSG fan or a Man City fan, or take your pick these days as these entities buy up more and more clubs. Let's get back to the point, which is we know Lyon's going to win this all again and steamroll over everybody. But Ada Hegerberg's injured at the moment and is not playing. And they've got enough depth that it's not a huge deal, but it's not nothing, I don't think.
It's not ideal for them. They've got last time I checked, Mbok was still out as well, which is a bit of a stinger in defence. They have Winnie Renard and of course Kalisha Buchanan, who can play as the centre back partners. But Mbok was really having a fantastic season last year and the year before as well. So they've always got a bit of depth. So, we saw that Amandine Henry was injured and couldn't play in the Champions League final. That's fine because they've just signed Sarah Bjorkgård and she's absolutely, it's the same thing as, okay, so you lose Ada Hegerberg, but then, you can rely on Nikita Paris or Eugenia Sommer or Delphine Cascarino for goals. There's always someone at Lyon who can pop up and plug a hole if need be. But yes, she's a big loss, unfortunately. But I think, early predictions of Lyon are gonna win another title. But they PSG kept themselves in touching distance last season, and had everything that happened not happened, maybe there could have been a surprise, or maybe it would have gone down exactly the same as it always does.
You mentioned Cascarino, and as much as I'm not per se a Lyon fan, I am a Cascarino fan. I think she's a terrific player. And as I've said on Twitter a few times, if Corinne Diacre would play a front three of Cascarino and Marie-Antoinette Katoto and Kadidiata Diani, France might actually win something, and they might have actually won something last year. But I think folks who watch I would like to think that folks over here, certainly they've heard Cascarino's name before. I'd like to think that if they watch the Champions League final and the sort of the Champions League tournament, they will have seen just how sensational a player she is, and I hope that continues. Because you watch them even more than I do, Sophie. You know full well how good she is. I think she's just got such star potential.
Absolutely, and she's, you know, she's been at a very high level for what feels like quite a long time, because she's still only 23, but she just seems to be on this upward curve. And when she gets to play for Lyon, she usually impresses. She pops up and she does these nice little things. But she's a really a hard worker as well, which is good to see in a young player. But I think if anyone has a chance to watch Lyon games, you know, there are players who are always going to pop out. But if you can keep an eye around about Castellino, you're probably going to see something good during 90 minutes. But there's a lot of players you can say that about for Lyon as well.
Well, we've been gone rambling on for quite a while now, as we are inclined to do whenever we get together. This has been a terrific show, Sophie. Thank you very much. And we will hope that all of these newsy bits that I've alluded to and teased on this show will come to pass. I think they will. It's just a matter of when. And we'll get ready for a real big weekend of women's football. It should be a lot of fun. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. For Sophie Lawson, who you can find on Twitter at Lawson_SV, and you'll find her writing at SB Nation and a whole bunch of other places. In fact, before we go, Sophie, why don't you tell the folks some of the places where your writing is these days?
Oh, blimey. The other place. Not a huge amount during a pandemic, actually. A bit for Prost International, the other bit for Backline Soccer, you'll see. If I can talk Jeff Kasuf into getting published on The Equalizer again. I pop all over the places, all over the place, writing about football all over the world. So, yeah.
I don't think you'll have too much trouble convincing Jeff to take your writing, as you usually don't. But I should mention, by the way, since you brought it up, he is a little busy right now since he and his wife just had a new baby, and congratulations to them on that. I have heard that reading Equalizer soccer stories to young children helps their development and makes them smarter. Hopefully, as you know, the saying goes over here, Sophie, as you know, and as Kevin knows, the popular phrase is that you've heard things, you know, but I have at least some substantive proof that reading The Equalizer does in fact make you smarter. So let's call time there. Again, Sophie, thanks very much. Kevin Laramie, our producer behind the scenes. This is Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer, thanking you for listening to the latest episode of the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network.